This is RTP. This is RTP180.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to your house. It's RTP 180. It's the third Thursday in August, and we've got a great show lined up for you here today. The subject is the next generation. We'll be talking all sorts of things about Utes, as Fred Gwynne said in the classic comedy My Cousin Vinny. My name is Wade Minter. I will be your MC for this event. We have a great lineup for you, and let's tell you a little bit more about RTP 180. RTP 180 is a free talk series, and it's brought to you by our sponsors, RTI International, and our streaming media sponsor, Dual Boot Partners. Check both of them out because they help us bring this to you. Now, normally we are in a building, not a screen that's just kind of like this. We're in a building called The Frontier. The Frontier is the region's only free, and I pause for emphasis, co-working facility. That's right, it's a beautiful place located, if not in the heart of RTP, at least in the pancreas. And unfortunately, you can't see it because COVID. But eventually we will all wear our masks and behave, and we'll be able to go back into a place like a co-working facility. If you are, check us out once we can go outside again. Now tonight, the way it's going to work is we have 4 speakers speaking to you about the next generation from their own perspective in areas of expertise. Each speaker will receive approximately 5 minutes to drop some knowledge on you. At the end of 5 minutes, you may hear a bell, which indicates that 5 minutes has elapsed. After they wrap up their talk, there will be approximately 5 minutes of Q&A from you, our audience. And we're going to get that Q&A from our Facebook live chat, possibly from social media, but also from our Zoom chat. For those of you who are joining us in Zoom tonight, set your Zoom chat to all panelists and attendees. And when I ask for questions, provide them. So I'm going to ask a question right now. So for all of you in our Zoom chat or Facebook Live, where are you right now that you're watching RTP 180? Where in the world are you? Go on and put that in Zoom chat. Go and put that in Facebook chat. We've got Miranda from Durham. We've got Michael from Chapel Hill. Durham, Carrie, Justin Topsel. Durham, Raleigh, Raleigh. Taylor's coming to us from Clayton, North Carolina. We got Andrea from Asheboro. Eileen from my hometown of Wake Forest. John coming to us from Holly Springs. John, good seeing you. Haven't seen you in quite a long time. Thanks for joining us. Yan's coming to us from RTP. Reenie's coming from their kitchen in Raleighwood. Beautiful. Thank you very much for putting that in. So during our speakers' presentations, if you have a question, go on and put that in there. That means I don't have to make one up because there'll be one from you that I can use. So I will ask for Q&A at the end. You'll have some opportunity to get some answers from our speakers, and that's how this will work. Awesome! If you want to connect with us during the show, please tweet at FrontierRTP. Please hashtag RTP180. We'll be checking that as well as our live streams in order to have a broad variety of questions. Excellent. I've said about all I need to say. You're not here for me. You're here for our speakers. So I think it's time to get RTP 180 on the road here August 20th, 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our first speaker to the virtual stage. She joined Prevent Child Abuse North Carolina in the fall of 2015 and has over 25 years experience in health and human services, nonprofit and government agency leadership. Please welcome our first speaker, Sharon Hirsch. You can go ahead, Sharon. We are here for you.
Okay, I need my slides to start. Okay. So when I grew up in the 1960s and 70s, childhood was really idyllic. We knew all of our neighbors. Parents knew the children in the neighborhood, and all of us as children knew parents as trusted adults. We spent most of our time after school and in the summers outside instead of inside on our electronic devices. Yet in reality, we were living in turbulent times. I was a toddler when Martin Luther King was assassinated, And I have vivid memories of being on a family vacation at Disney World, and my father was watching Watergate hearings on TV at night. In my privileged childhood, I was sheltered from hearing much about the civil rights movement, Vietnam, and the massive cultural changes happening in our country. There are echoes of the same struggles now. Today, we don't have that same sense of community, connection, and support. Children are exposed to traumatic experiences all too regularly in our culture. Active shooter drills are common in schools. The opioid crisis has exposed too many children to substance addiction in their homes, and community violence is much too prevalent. It's deeply concerning as we think about how these changes in our culture are impacting not just the environment that children are growing up in, but the ways that is changing how their brains and bodies develop, and how that could affect their health for their entire life. Yet I sincerely live into my title as Chief Executive Optimist at Prevent Child Abuse North Carolina. I'm optimistic because the science makes it clear that while adverse childhood experiences are common, they are preventable. ACEs are potentially traumatic events that occur in childhood. They can include witnessing or experiencing violence in the home or community, experiencing abuse or neglect, or growing up in a family with mental health or substance use problems. Without the buffer of a caring adult, ACEs can produce a toxic stress response that can change brain development and affect how the body responds to stress. ACEs are linked to chronic health problems, mental illness, and substance misuse in adulthood. In fact, ACEs are correlated with 5 of the top 10 leading causes of death in adults. Yet the evidence on what works to prevent ACEs indicates that the solutions are not rocket science. They are built on the power of relationships and connection. We know that caring, supportive relationships are the biggest builder of children's brains and can buffer the negative effects of childhood trauma. Relationships help us learn better, work better, and parent better. When we experience tough times, they help us heal. With each connection, we develop a healthier and stronger community. One of my favorite quotes about the work we need to do to build a healthier, stronger, more prosperous sense of community comes from Peter Block in his book that's simply titled Community. The context that restores community is one of possibility, generosity, and gifts, rather than one of problem-solving, fear, and retribution. I want to challenge you to think about how you can foster possibility, generosity, and gifts as you work to build connections to safe, stable, nurturing, and relationships and environments for children. We can prevent child abuse in North Carolina. Creating the conditions for safe, stable, nurturing relationships for children and families and entire communities are fundamental to preventing ACEs. And there are many ways to do that. We can strengthen economic supports for families and family-friendly workplace policies. The COVID-19 pandemic has made it clear that economic supports are critical when families are in crisis, and we need to invest for the long term to keep families strong. We can ensure a strong start for children by investing in high-quality childcare and home visiting programs like Family Connects right here in Durham. We can enhance skills to help adults and youth handle stress, manage emotions, and tackle everyday challenges by taking care of the mind and body through self-care strategies like mindfulness or yoga. And we can connect youth to caring adults through mentoring programs. We must approach prevention collaboratively because prevention happens in partnership. The pandemic has reminded us that our relationships and connections with each other are essential, especially for our children. We can all recognize challenges that families face and offer support and encouragement to reduce their stress. We can support community programs financially and advocate for policies that provide safe and healthy conditions for all children and families. The science is clear. One caring adult can buffer the impact of trauma on a child and build resilience. While the challenge to prevent child abuse feels daunting, we know that nurturing relationships, positive childhood experiences, and a supportive community of caring adults just like you can change the future for our children. Together, in partnership, we can and must prevent child abuse in North Carolina, because what happens in childhood lasts a lifetime.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are, a big virtual hand for Sharon Hirsch. Oddly enough, all of my programs tend to be mentoring programs. That was a terrible joke. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions about preventing child abuse, ACEs, anything that Sharon talked about in her 5 minutes there, go on and put that in chat. That's right. Time to get your questions in chat so we can have her drop some knowledge on you. While we're waiting for our questions to come in, Sharon, I will kick you off with a question. So you mentioned different types of ACEs in your talk. What is a good way for people who are kind of in their own lives to recognize potential adverse childhood experiences just for awareness purposes?
There are lots of ways. One is to, you can watch a TED Talk about ACEs that's by Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris that you can Google quickly on the internet. That you can Google what's your ACE score to find out what your score might be. We know that the greater number of ACEs that someone has experienced, the greater the risks are. And you can just talk to your family and friends about what you've experienced as a child.
All right. Excellent. From Elisa in Zoom chat, what resources do businesses have to learn about and help implement family-friendly policies?
That is a great question. There's a wonderful project in North Carolina called Family Forward NC. It's a project of the North Carolina Early Childhood Foundation, and they have developed a series of case studies and a list of great policy options like paid family and medical leave, flexible work schedules that businesses can access to learn more from one another.
Great. In Zoom chat, we've got a question from Taylor. How can we, the universal we, get involved in building connections and support individuals who have experienced trauma and need that support in our communities?
Gosh, there are lots of ways. One is just to reach out to your neighbors and help one another, get connected through your faith community to support folks. You can get involved with local community-based organizations. In the Triangle area, there are so many wonderful organizations. There's Safe Child in Raleigh. There's the Exchange Club Family Center in Durham, Triangle Family Services. There are so many organizations that you can connect to really support and strengthen families as a volunteer or as a donor.
Excellent. That's great for us to know. In Zoom chat, Andrea mentions that connections matter. Can you explain why that is so important?
It is incredibly important. As I said in my talk, relationships and connections are the biggest builders of our babies' brains and the greatest healer of trauma. And we have launched a campaign in North Carolina called Connections Matter. We've got training, we're launched a social norms campaign to help folks understand the importance of connections and to encourage more North Carolinians to be a connection to their community.
Excellent. Thank you for all you do in helping prevent child abuse here in our community. Ladies and gentlemen, a big virtual hand for Sharon Hirsch. All right, that was a great first talk there. Hopefully you've taken something away from that. These talks will also be posted after the fact on our YouTube channel. So if you want to go back and review something, you'll be able to see it there sometime after we're done. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to meet our next speaker of the evening. He's the founder and chief dreamer of Village of Wisdom, which translates the wisdom of Black parents into culturally responsive learning strategies. Please welcome William Jackson.
Thanks for having me, Wade. As I said, my name is William Jackson. Excited to talk to y'all today, and I only got 5 minutes, so I'm gonna go ahead and jump in. Going to talk about never being a better time to protect Black genius, and I want to start off kind of with a bit of a mental experiment, and just I want you to imagine coming up on a lake and seeing a lake that's full of dead fish. And frequently when people think about this, and if you ever come upon a lake with full of dead fish, you would assume that the water is dirty, that there's something wrong with the water and that is killing the fish. And I think that's a really smart assumption, right? We would assume that that is basically what is happening. Unfortunately, when we think about a lot of the social ills in our world, we don't take the same assumption. And what I mean by that is that there's a problem like homelessness or poverty or anything like that, we blame the homeless person. We blame the person that's living in poverty as opposed to the ecosystem. And in particular, when we think about Black children learning in schools, a lot of times what we do is we blame that child or we blame their family instead of thinking about how the school environment, the water that they're in, is actually probably contributing to their lack of performance. And I think a big reason why is because a lot of folks don't actually understand what it takes to learn and what learning looks like. And so when we think about learning can be explained in a fairly simple way, which is that is the connection of new information to prior knowledge. That is that you have something in your brain that you're trying to connect to the new information that somebody's sharing with you. And in order for you to do that, you need a little juice, you need a little gasoline, you need a little battery pack. And what we call that is motivation. So you have to have the motivation to learn. You have to have the motivation to connect new information to prior knowledge. And so if we think about what learning is, and we think back to this analogy of the dirty water killing the fish, we have to think about what in the learning environment is actually impeding the learning process. What is dirtying that process and making it difficult for Black children to connect new information to prior knowledge? And if we think about it, and if we've paid any attention to the news, what we know is that Black children are often denied bringing their full selves to the classroom, meaning that there's a cultural mismatch that is frequently created because of the Black child is told that their dreadlocks are not allowed in the classroom, that the clothes that they're wearing is not allowed in the classroom, that the way that they speak is not allowed in the classroom, that they should separate themselves from their community and the people who love them in order to be able to be successful in that classroom. And so what I'm saying here is that when we deny children, Black children, who they are, that denies their prior knowledge, and that means that they can't complete this necessary mechanism to learning. And in order for them to do that, and in order for them to complete that, we have to think about, well, what does it mean to protect Black genius, right? And that's how we've talked about this work at Village of Wisdom, is that we've looked for different ways to protect Black genius. And so I'm gonna give you a couple of examples. The first example of a way that we threaten Black genius and the way that we dirty water is that I walked into a classroom and I noticed that the classroom had a list of scientists on the wall, and it said, hey, here are all the scientists that had something major to contribute over the last 200 to 300 years. And as I looked on the wall, it was just a whole bunch of white guys, one white guy after another white guy after another white guy. And so as a Black person, I don't see myself in this classroom. I don't see myself in science. And so am I going to be motivated? Am I going to bring my full self to the classroom? But thankfully, I had parents that protected my Black genius, right? Because my parents brainwashed me into believing that all scientists were Black kind of at an early age. Like, I didn't really realize that there weren't Black scientists, right? I mean, so what I'm saying is that when parents and teachers really help Black children see themselves inside of a learning environment, then that Black child can bring their full self to the environment. And then I want you to think about another situation where later on in life, I remember talking to a colleague of mine when I was in grad school, and that colleague, who was also a teacher, said, I was telling him that I was planning on going to get my PhD from UNC Chapel Hill, and he looked really confused, and he immediately asked me, well, do you think you can get into UNC Chapel Hill? And this is really reminiscent of what a lot of Black children experience in schools, where when they apply for an AP class or they want to be in honors, folks oftentimes question why they're in the classroom. And so what that does is, again, it threatens the motivation of that child. It threatens their ability or desire to want to connect new information to prior knowledge. But thankfully, I had an experience while I was at my HBCU where I had these two Black women who really poured into a lot of us and pushed us to pursue research opportunities and actually get the opportunity to go to a lot of different universities while we were in undergrad. And so I had already actually been accepted to a PhD program in the sciences at UNC Chapel Hill. So I knew that I could go, right? So that's the can-do attitude. That's the high expectations. And again, we got 5 minutes, so I can't break down all 6 elements of the Black genius profile, but I can give you those 2 tidbits. And so, you know, when we think about like, okay, well, why has there never been a better time to protect Black genius? If we think about the state of the world, we think about the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic. If we think about the fact that we're not super sure that our climate is going to hold up for the next 50 years, we have a lot of problems to solve. And if we're going to solve those problems, if we're going to live in this world, then we need to unlock all the opportunities that are in the minds of the 7 million plus Black children that live inside of our country, right? So we have to give them an opportunity to bring their full selves to experience culturally affirming and culturally responsive learning environments and protect their Black genius so that we might have the opportunity to enjoy this earth for another 100,000 years, because I think we're going to need every one of those 7 million chances that those Black children can provide us.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, big virtual hand for William Jackson. Let's get our questions into chat, whether that's Facebook chat or Zoom chat. We'll be able to get you some answers. So while we're waiting for those first questions to come in, I will kick you off with a question. So my question is, one of the things that I think has really come to the forefront in recent years is that representation matters. People need to be able to see themselves in a position of knowledge and authority in order to achieve all of their greatness and potential. What sorts of tactics and strategies can you suggest for those of us who are around Black children to really make sure that we're giving them that representation to unlock their genius?
Yeah, so I talk a lot about this, and that is to find the intellectual contributions of Black people who are related to the interest areas of that particular Black child, right? So if that child is interested in science, like a really quick activity is to just Google Black scientists, right? If that child is really interested in the arts, Google Black artists and highlight those intellectual contributions. Because a lot of times what we'll do is we'll be like, oh, well, we want to teach this kid about math, and we'll disentangle math from that child's Blackness, as if there weren't Black folks who have contributed to mathematics, right? And so I would just say to highlight that. And then also, if you go to our site on Village of Wisdom or blackgenius.com, there's a thing called a Black Genius Profile. And we advocate for Black children and their parents to go through this process. And it kind of helps you walk through like really deepening our understanding of the Black child and finding ways to protect their strengths.
Excellent. Question from Facebook chat. What is the Black Genius Framework, and how can parents develop their children's genius?
Yeah, so the Black Genius Framework is, like I said, it's kind of highlighted on our site, and it's actually 6 elements that we have tied to the positive development of Black children. And at this point, we've actually done a study with like 1,000+ respondents in schools, where students show that if they receive the type of cultural affirmation that the Black Genius Framework calls for, that actually leads to better attendance. It leads to less suspensions and actually better academic performance. But at the end of the day, when we're talking about Black genius, we're talking about this ability to create new systems of equity and justice and to dismantle systems of oppression. So when we say Black genius, we literally mean those 7 million chances that we talked about to create a better world.
We are going to need everyone's talents to make it through, that is for sure. Question from Susan in Zoom chat. Does Village of Wisdom do teacher training?
Yeah, so we do teacher training. We're actually working with a local school now. What we do is we actually target like a small group of teachers inside of a school, and we try to work with that cohort who's really ready to kind of take on this work, and then we try to grow that cohort of teachers over time, so that eventually, though, that group of teachers can take over the PD for us, right? So they become the teachers and the experts in Black genius, and we can kind of fade to the Black, so that they can kind of take over.
Excellent. I think that is the end of our questions. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for William Jackson. Thank you, William. Appreciate it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're halfway through our list of 4 speakers. Our next speaker of the evening, she's the executive director of CAM Raleigh, which is a free contemporary art museum in Raleigh's Warehouse District. Please welcome to our virtual stage, Gab Smith.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Hey, everybody. Great to see you.
We can't see you, Gab. You may be able to see us.
How about now?
Unless you are a contemporary art black box, I don't think it's working. You could be a contemporary art black box. It could be trendy. I don't know. There you are. Hi, Gab.
Awesome. Hey, guys. Sorry for the delay. I'm not sure what's up, but it's great to see y'all. Thank you so much for having me. So Contemporary Art Museum, we are a non-collecting art museum, and this is your open invitation to come and see us. I know it's COVID. We're doing a ton of cool stuff online at camraleigh.org, so please check us out when you can. Next slide, Amanda. What I wanted to talk about really quickly today is to let you know this is some of my early work, but I am not an artist, and you do not need to be an artist to hear what I have to say today. Next slide. And next slide. Really what I wanted to communicate to you all today is that CAM is secretly and not so secretly a confidence machine. Next slide. What is confidence? It really means with fidelity or with full truth. That's the definition. And one of the other things that you may not know about CAM is we do a lot of after-school programs, a lot of outreach programs, and all of them are geared toward the simple idea of building confidence in young people throughout the community. Because our thought is if you're confident in your ideas, what else can you do? Next slide. Thanks so much. And so I think it's important to point out, I am Captain Obvious. Everything that I'm going to tell you and share with you today are things that you already know. But one thought that I had was, next slide, there's 7 tools. One thought that I had is we're always talking to young people about how to build confidence. And there's sort of 7 things that we're always working on as we're talking about art, as we're meeting artists, as we're learning about creativity. There's 7 things that we're always modeling and doing. So why not do them together tonight? So if you want to stand up, if you want to get out of your chair, you can. If you don't, you don't. But number 1, next slide, Amanda, is your posture, is your brand. Oh, P.S., you have all these things already. So this is massive Captain Obvious. You already have them. Next slide, your posture is your brand. What does that mean? You've got to stand for something. Absolutely. You've got to know what you stand for. Absolutely. This week and next week are such great weeks to watch how compelling people are and how easy it is to listen to somebody that has good posture. You're watching the Democratic convention this week. Next week, you might be watching the Republican convention. You're certainly watching the news. Watch how people stand is what we talk to our young people about. Get comfortable in who you are in your posture, and people will listen to you in a different way. Next slide. Make eye contact. It's really hard for middle school kids sometimes because they're so shy. Their bodies are changing, their hormones are raging, they're learning how to be in the world as young humans. So something that we really practiced a lot is it's okay to look somebody in the eye. We make people very comfortable in their own skin, talking to people, looking them in the eye. Make eye contact. And what we tell people is it's okay to pay attention. It's okay to look away and look back. But eye contact is an important tool to listen and talk. Next slide. Smile with your heart. This is one that I think it's really hard when we're all sort of at home and thinking about COVID. But when you smile, and we practice what I mean. What I mean is smile with your heart. Think about the things that you love. Think about joy. Think about a happy moment as you have them. And that's the way that you smile. And that's the way that we communicate and connect with each other. Smile with your heart. Next slide. Tone of voice. It's so easy to be tone deaf to what's happening around us right now. And so this is a bit of a metaphor for adults. We are all learning how to be in the world as humans, how to connect with different people all the time. Think about our tone. Think about how we can think about other perspectives and listen to those other perspectives. It's just another way to be in the world as a human being right now. And one that I know, I think most people in the room are more than 18 or more than 21 years old. One of the things that we find that most adults roll their eyes at when middle school students do it is answer a question with a question. We all have that intonation that's like, what color is the sky? Blue. What's my name? Gab. So as these things are happening, think about a period, think about an exclamation point, think about an ellipsis, and really focus on what you're saying and slow down the way that you're saying it. And finally, listen. We all are trying to listen so carefully right now to each other to learn more, to reflect, and listening has become more important than ever. So one of the things that we talk to young people about, and when I say young people, most of our outreach work focuses on middle school students. But as you're thinking about what you want to impart on anybody, the idea of listening intently and fully is so important. So remember to listen. Next slide. Right. And the next one, I think, is just a recap, right? And so we already have these things inside of us. And so as we go out into the world, not just as middle school students, but as fully formed human beings. Oh, I'm sorry, be a team player. This is super important. Everybody belongs on the team. Let's make sure everybody feels welcome. Let's make sure we are all in this together. Be on the team because you belong on the team. And sometimes that means someone else is going to get the credit, and sometimes that means you're going to get the credit and score the goal or make the basket or have the awesome idea. But remember, we're all a part of something larger, and that's so very important right now. And just a quick recap, Amanda, your posture is your brand. Make eye contact. Smile with your heart. Do not answer a question with a question. Remember your punctuation. Don't be afraid of the silence. That's a little bonus that I threw in there. A lot of times we're so ready to have the right answer. We're so ready to just spit something back to let somebody know that we heard them, that we forget to listen and reflect. Think of the silence in between, like the beautiful white space in a poem or the in between stanzas in a song. Don't be afraid of the silence. Listen, practice, and be on the team. And if you want to see these skills in action in young people, come to CAM on a First Friday or a family day, and you'll see all of the awesome work that we're doing with middle school students. I'd love for you to come and see that. This is just a tease. It's an open invitation to come see not only the incredible artists that are here, but the way that we're using art as a vehicle to transform our community. I can't wait to see you soon. Thank you for listening.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, big virtual hand for Gab Smith. All right, it's time to get your questions in. You can get your questions in Zoom chat. You can get your questions in Facebook chat. Go on and give us your questions. I will kick it off with one while we wait for people to furiously type into the Zoom chat. So I know my experience has been that often people consider confidence to be something that you're either born with or you don't, or you're not. That there are confident people and there are non-confident people, but it sounds like your perspective is everyone has tools to be able to develop their confidence. If someone considers themselves a non-confident person, what are a couple of tips you would give them to show themselves what they can do?
I mean, I think the biggest tip is to practice whatever you're trying to be more confident at. You know, public speaking is something that I think people have more of a fear of even than sharks. But I like to use a sports metaphor because I think a lot of people can understand that. The more you run, the faster you'll be, or the stronger you'll be at running. The more you practice shooting, the better shot that you'll be. The more you practice making a poem stronger, the more you practice a rhyme, the stronger it'll be. I think the number one thing is hard work and practice.
Excellent. While we're waiting for some more questions to come in, a follow-up. So you're giving this talk about confidence from the perspective of someone at a contemporary art museum. What do you see as the intersection between confidence and art, and how do they help support each other?
Well, I love that question. Thank you. To us, we're a part of the community, and everything that we do is a vehicle for transformation. And so the way we use all the exhibitions at CAM and engage with artists in the community is teach the 7 things that I just shared through art appreciation. And so when we're working with young people, the conversations around what we're talking about are art and ideas, and all of the things that we're teaching about confidence are just baked into that program. So you come out more informed and excited about particular artists, and also a little bit more confident in your own opinions, in your own physicality as a human at the same time. So it's a little bit radical, and it's a super fun way to use art as a vehicle to think about supporting our community.
Excellent. We've got a question coming in from social media. The question is, listening can be hard. What are some actionable tips to be a better listener?
I think one tip that I've really tried to do is focus, whether it's on a screen or the person that you're sitting in front of or on the phone, is to try not to be distracted, to be fully present in that conversation. And if you start there in your practice, some of the other things will come along. So I think the number one thing is really try to be present.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, check out CAM in downtown Raleigh in the Warehouse District. Wear a mask when you do. Give a big hand for Gab Smith.
Thank y'all so much. Take good care.
Thank you for being here tonight. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are moving on to our last but not least speaker of the evening. So please welcome the Director of and this is big words, so I'm going to have to pause for a second. Translational Neuroprevention Research in the FPG Child Development Institute at UNC, and also director of the National Prevention Science Coalition to Improve Lives. Welcome to the virtual stage, Dr. Diana Fishbein.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. I hope you are doing well. I will be talking about why it's important for science to be translated to policymakers, particularly when your science has implications for our quality of life. And I'll also talk a little bit about how to engage in science advocacy. So next, please. The reasons why I transformed from geeky scientist into an active science advocate are very personal. I grew up in and around Washington, D.C., in a neighborhood that, as we say, is criminogenic. And although my family life was really good and my parents were loving and warm and had a safe haven, outside my front door, the world was not safe where I grew up. And I experienced adverse childhood events. I witnessed community violence, domestic violence, child abuse, some of my friends who were severely abused. As I was growing up, as I was a child witnessing this, not fully grasping what was going on. I witnessed crime. There were gangs in our neighborhood. There were drugs, mostly alcohol, but a little bit of other kinds of drugs as well. There were murders in my neighborhood. It was not safe. And so that was my outlying environment. But for me personally, I experienced discrimination. I was persecuted. I experienced hate crimes. I was rejected, all because I was Jewish in an anti-Semitic neighborhood. And as a child, I did not fully understand this. So I internalized it and felt like I was defective. So when I got to finally 5th grade, I was very curious about why so many people who were exposed to adversity did not have bad outcomes, that they were actually resilient. So they would have violent parents, there would be alcoholism, there would be abuse, they would witness fighting with parents and so on and so forth. But they were resilient somehow, and I didn't understand this. Where did these different pathways come from? So literally in 10 years old, I decided I was interested eventually in a career that studied the basis for individual differences. I didn't articulate it that well, but I wanted to understand why people were different under similar environmental circumstances. And perhaps even more importantly, I didn't want to see others suffer. I didn't want other children to experience the pain that I did when I was growing up. Okay, so then I get to, not yet, but I get to 9th grade. I get into 9th grade, okay, and I'm kind of getting a little cool, I'm kind of popular, and oops, people are enjoying, people are, liking me better, and I'm feeling better about myself. And I have this boyfriend named Carl Crotty, I swear. His name was Carl Crotty, and he was Mr. Cool. And the weekend before, he, in a gang fight, had just before that, had a gang fight where he cracked a kid's skull open. And here I am sitting next to a study class, and everybody was fawning over him like he was the coolest thing. And I kind of, whoa, this is not cool. This is not the life for me. This is not what I need to do and go down this pathway. And that's when I really decided what I wanted to spend my life really doing. And so these experiences fueled my passion for a program of research that focuses on the social conditions that impact neurodevelopment, brain development, and that give rise to individual differences in the propensity for behavioral and mental health problems. And I was also interested in a public policy agenda that aims to prevent the exposure to these conditions that compromise the healthy development of children and adolescents. Next, please. So I developed a joint program in neuroscience. Next, please. Thank you. And neuroscience and criminology. It was very unique. And, but it was the embodiment of what I was interested in doing. And then I subsequently took on a lot of different positions. And if you looked at my CV, you think I would have no idea what I wanted to do when I grew up, because I had a lot of different positions. I really wanted to have all these different experiences at the university level. I had federal government jobs too. I also worked for a nonprofit research corporation, which happened to be RTI, and I was at RTI for 15 years. And then I also had legislative supported research and evaluation. But I found through all this, next please, that things were siloed, that people were not talking to each other. And so they didn't understand that there was a body of knowledge already out there, enough for us to act as scientists, that we know enough that we should act on it. And what good does it do if we're doing this for science and nobody else knows about it and we can't have an impact? And scientists are very afraid of doing these things, of speaking out and of advocating and of getting the information to those that are in power and have the potential to act policy. Interestingly enough, people really don't even know what prevention science is and what that body of knowledge is that is really very substantial. When I'm on Capitol Hill talking to legislators, they say there's a science to that they don't even know. And that means that these policymakers have not changed public health, they haven't changed education, child welfare, criminal justice. All these policies remain relatively unaffected by this body of knowledge that we have in prevention science, even though we have the knowledge to exert a significant impact on a population level. Next, please. So I crossed over. I became frustrated with research. I still do it. I'm still very involved, but I became frustrated in the fact that we were having a lasting impact. And so I wanted to be sure that we could do this by injecting science into policy. Next, please. I developed the National Prevention Science Coalition to Improve Lives about 6 or 7 years ago. We have almost 800 members. We have 70 or 80 organizational affiliates on the national level. We are a real force to contend with. And our mission in life is to transfer the body of knowledge that we have to inform policy and decision-making in those that create our policies. And so we want to institutionalize this knowledge. We want to make sure that if we know something works well, let's not just do it from project to project, from grant to grant. Let's embed these strategies into the school curricula, into community strategies, community organizations, into the policies that we have that affect everything that we do, and have a mentality around let's be science-minded. And one of the great things that we've done recently, just this year, is develop the Congressional Prevention Policy Caucus. And so we have this on the Hill, and we work with federal legislators. We have legislators from both sides of the aisle, and we go in there and we tell them what the science is. And we build relationships with them so they can trust us to give them information that they need for their decision making. Next, please. You can go to the next one, since my time is up, and we'll just advocate. We tell our policymakers, and it's at the very heart of our democratic system to do this. And our expertise is appreciated and helpful to policymakers. The last thing we want is for policy to be shaped without the critical information that they need. And I'll just make one last point. It's not hard to do, and it's really important that nonprofits represent marginalized populations that don't have a voice. I call them our quiet constituents. Let's uplift their voices so that they can be represented in national policies. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Dr. Fishbein. Now it's time to get your questions in. We can get them through Facebook. We can get them through Zoom chat. Our first question comes from Rini in Zoom chat. Rini suggests that people connect with social workers because they do prevention. Are there other folks that people may run across in their day-to-day lives that specialize in this area as well?
Yes, I work very closely with social workers. They are our gems. They are the ones that are really doing the work. They're the boots on the ground, right? They're taking the science and they're really embedding it. And so what is needed, though, is for all of us to be talking to our policymakers so that the programs and the strategies and so forth that we know work can be systematically delivered where they are needed the most. So we definitely do connect with social workers. And I think the question was, who else? There are a lot of players in this space, and we're really developing relationships now between the scientists, the practitioners, which would include clinicians, social workers, teachers, educators, and community organizers and so forth, and connecting all of them with policymakers. And now that I actually live in North Carolina, we're doing a lot of this work on the state level now as well.
All right, excellent. Question coming in from social media. You mentioned moving from research to policy. If there was one or two policies that you could see implemented that would make a difference in this area, what would they be?
Oh gosh, there's so many. There's so many. One thing is that I would embed in school systems the ability to identify and detect problems in children that are indicative of traumatic experiences, and not to stigmatize, but rather to offer trauma-informed programs systematically in our schools, embedding them into curricula, especially in areas where we know trauma rates are high. I worked in Baltimore City almost my entire adult life until about 5 years ago. And the rates of child abuse are so high in Baltimore City. It is one of the highest in the country. And so what do we need to do there? We need to recognize what the consequences are for children and not give them zero tolerance policies, which actually worsen the problem, but rather embed trauma-informed strategies that will help to increase their coping and their social skills and their social competency skills and their resilience. But I'm going to just say this again, that while we can do that, we have to have this at a policy level, not just school to school or even school district. We need to have an umbrella that will be protected overall.
Excellent. Question coming in from Racina in Zoom chat. Are your studies available for the public to access so that they can assist with advocating?
Absolutely. Please contact me. I'll make myself readily available. I'm here in the Triangle now. You can contact me either through, you can look at our website, mpscoalition.org, and get to me that way. Or you can find me at UNC at the FPG Child Development Institute, and I can definitely hook you up. There's so much work to be done.
All right, question coming in from Wyman in Zoom chat. Are the tools and techniques that you use for prevention science work, are those tools useful for translating other sciences into policy?
Yes, in fact, they are generic. So my background is in neuroscience, but I am more interested in what we know about how social conditions affect the way the brain works and what we can do about it to improve, trajectories and to make all children's life. So that's what I'm on towards prevention science. But there are, there's climate science, there's a whole range of sciences, and the techniques are exactly the same. And I will tell you, we do trainings. We will train people in how to advocate, how to write briefs, how to write fact sheets and op-eds, how to interact with policymakers, because it's a different kind of communication altogether. It has to be very succinct. It has to be to the point. There have to be specific policy implications when you interact with lawmakers. And so we do that training and would love to engage. The more, the better. Join us.
All right. Last question will come in from Facebook live chat from Doc. Doc asks, how might it look if we shift from a trauma-informed lens to a healing-focused framework inside of our schools?
Oh, absolutely. You know what? And it should be universal, right? It doesn't have to only be in disadvantaged and marginalized communities. Shouldn't that be universal? Because as we've already learned from previous talks, that is so essential to nurturing brain development, nurturing children, making sure that they have the skills and the self-efficacy and so forth that they need to really succeed in life, academically, socially, behaviorally, with their relationships, and so on and so forth. So yes, I love that, yes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, a big virtual hand for Dr. Diana Fishbein. Welcome to North Carolina, Doc. We appreciate it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of RTP 180 here, August 2020. Thank you very much for joining us. Tell your friends. We will be live streaming every third Thursday until we can get back together in person for free beer and popcorn at the Frontier. So that means next month we'll be back here, same bat time, same bat station, for Expressions of Color. This is a rescheduled event from February in honor of Black History Month. I believe February we had some winter weather, and that was before the world ended. So now we've got everybody back. So you'll get to experience that talk from February that you could have seen in person but didn't, but now can see on Zoom. I think I got that right. So that'll be the third Thursday in September. That is September 17th, 6 p.m. right here. You can register on Zoom or catch us on Facebook Live. You can also catch the recording of this presentation on our YouTube page coming up in the next few days. Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you taking time out of your evening for RTP 180, the region's lightning fast talk series. On behalf of our sponsors, RTI International and Dual Boot Partners, I've been your MC, Wade Mentor, saying thank you for joining us. We'll see you next month, and have a safe journey across your living room, because we're all at home. Good night, everybody.